So guys, our first chapter in economics is all about what we call basic economic problem. What do we mean by basic economic problem? You know, like economics is a social science, and we're trying to solve the problem, which is how do we allocate resources that are not too many. So the biggest challenge that we face right now when it comes to economic problem, as we call it, is of something called scarcity. So scarcity for us is basically a key economic problem. And this key economic problem basically means that there are limited resources, but we have unlimited wants. You know, and that is kind of like a big challenge, because when you have limited resources, just that resources are, what are the resources? Resources are things we need to consume, or things we need to make more things that we need. For example, I know this is weird, but things we need to make more things that we need. Basically, we need more of, for example, land to produce crops. We need more of labor to produce output and all that. And this land and labor and, you know, like capital goods, like, for example, machinery and so on and so forth, all of these goods are what we call limited resources. They're not so much in supply. They are limited in supply. And because of that limitation, there is a challenge, because, you know, like we want to consume as many sort of goods as we want. You probably want a new laptop. You probably want a new, for example, car, a new house. I need a new bike. I need a new cell phone, a new computer, and so on. The list goes on and on and on. And when we look at the means to produce those goods, those resources, they are limited. And because of this unlimited sort of wants and limited resources, there is a problem of scarcity. And because of this scarcity, we know that our wants will not be met. So it is true, because of this challenge, there is a problem that our wants will not be met because of these limited resources. Now, before I move on, is there any question before we move on? Do we agree with the problem? Do we understand this problem? Anything that you guys want to add here before we move on? So this is what I wrote. This is a fundamental problem that all societies face. It refers to excess of human wants, too much of human wants, or what can actually be produced to fulfill these wants. So the human wants are unlimited, but what can be produced to fulfill these wants is basically kind of limited. And the fact that the human wants are unlimited makes us basically face this problem of scarcity. And because of scarcity, we know all that we have to make a choice. So there is a choice that have to be made. And that choice is basically simply that if I decide to take, for example, economics in my A levels, you know, I might not be able to take, for example, business studies, BST, business studies. And therefore, I'm making a choice here. If I decide to take economics, and my next best alternative, let me call this here, BST is my next best alternative. If BST or business studies is my next best alternative, then I call this the opportunity cost. And this is an important word. We will talk about this in detail. Opportunity cost of taking or choosing econ in A levels is simply business studies. It's the benefit you could have gotten if you'd taken business studies, but you chose economics. So what I'm trying to say is this, that because of scarcity, in short, let me just go back here, because of scarcity, which is basically unlimited wants and limited resources, we end up making choices. Because not all the wants are satisfied, we have to basically make choices. And when we make choices, there are some things we choose. For example, if I decide to use my money to buy a laptop, and I decide not to buy a bike, then basically when I decide not to buy a bike, that bike becomes my, we call it opportunity cost. And I want to talk about opportunity cost in detail a little later, but I just want to sort of introduce the idea that because of scarcity, people are making choices. And the next best alternative, when you choose one, if I choose A and I don't choose B, then B becomes my opportunity cost. And A is basically my choice. If I choose A for apple, and I don't choose B, B for bananas, for example, then bananas will be my opportunity cost. In other words, the opportunity that I lose by, or the opportunity that I lose. Now, why do I choose A over B? Anyone? Why would somebody choose A over B? Why is why is A chosen over B? If good A is chosen over B, anyone who can answer me why is good A chosen over good B?
A is
The answer is, guys, most of you are writing the right thing. The answer is because you might prefer A to be better than B. The benefit that you get from A might be exceeding the benefit that you get from B. And that's why you must have chosen A. Clearly, if you are somebody who is rational, who is somebody who's making informed choices, who is somebody who knows about his benefit and cost, would say that because I prefer A over B, let's say if I'm a consumer, because I prefer apples over bananas, I chose apples over bananas. So the preference is such that A is preferred over B, and that is probably why that is A is your choice and B is your opportunity cost. Does that make sense? So guys, the concept of scarcity leads us to make choices. So let's read this paragraph here. The key issue that arises from the existence of scarcity is that it forces people to make choices. So we're making choices here, right? And I gave you an example that, you know, if you choose economics, you may decide to choose economics, but you may not end up choosing business studies and so on and so forth. So each individual must choose which good and service to consume. You know, you may need to decide which goods and service you may need to buy. So you need to basically prioritize your consumption, right? Because you cannot satisfy all your wants, you need to make a priority. You know, those which are giving you probably more benefit are basically being preferred over others. And this kind of a choice that you are making is what we call sometimes individual choice. This is an individual choice. But the choice could also be made by, for example, firms. You know, what output to produce. It can be made by, for example, government. For example, should we make the bridge or should we make the hospital? So all your economic actors, you know, like we call them all your economic actors, be it individuals, be it firms, be it government, they are making choices. So these choices are being made, and basically these choices can lead to opportunity cost. And before I move on to talk about more, I just want to ask you guys, why do we truly care about opportunity cost? So guys, you're right. The idea of opportunity cost being important is because it's stemming from the whole notion that if you truly know the value of what you're giving up, you know, like if you know the value of what you're giving up, for example, I know exactly what the value I am giving up of anything, it will help me then understand the true benefit of it. So for example, if I exactly know what B is giving me, if I know the benefit of B, I can then make an informed choice and say, okay, I know what B is giving me. This is the next best alternative given up. And therefore, this is, I should do at least better than what B is giving me. And if B is giving me something, let's say, which is better than A, then A becomes my choice and B becomes my opportunity cost. So the notion of opportunity cost is therefore important because it helps us make informed decisions. Because not unless we know what we are giving up on, we won't be able to make basically the right choices. And the best way to look at how we can allocate resources in this world, we need to basically do so through the concept of valuing, or through the concept of measuring our opportunity cost. And if we keep on making the right choices, we will be able to basically allocate resources properly. Okay, now moving on. Then comes this notion of basically economic goods versus free goods. So I want to talk about that as well. So remember, this whole chapter is about introduction to economics. So it's called basic economic problem. It has all the key concepts that we need to go over and talk about before we actually get into the real stuff. So the next thing that we want to discuss is basically the notion of what we call economic good versus free good. So let me write this here. Economic goods versus free goods. Okay, so what are economic goods versus what are free goods? So we say this, that economic goods are all those goods which are scarce. Any good that is out there which is scarce is called an economic good, which means that the resources that I use to make that good is basically limited in supply. While free good for us is any good that is not scarce, or in other words, unlimited in supply. Okay, so free goods are what we call unlimited in supply, while economic goods are what we call scarce, and they are limited in supply. So the problem of economic goods is that because they are scarce, there is an opportunity cost. Because if I am deciding to choose, let's say, good A versus good B, then if good A and good B are both scarce, then there is an opportunity cost that we're making. Now, one more thing which we want to talk about is that, give me example, if you guys have any examples, give me examples of what we call free goods. Do you guys have any examples of free goods? So a good example of this is, somebody can say, is sunlight. Sunlight is what we call a free good. I agree completely with you guys. Sunlight is a Similarly, like probably water is also, like seawater could be what we call a free good as well. So, and air example is another example of what we call free goods. And now with these free goods, which are scarce or unlimited in supply, one would argue this, that because they are free, there is no price to it. While economic goods, because they're scarce and there's an opportunity cost, there is definitely a price. So if somebody asks me, what's the price of sunlight? The answer is 0. And the reason is very simple, because it's unlimited in supply. But what's the price of water, like clean water? And one would argue this, the clean water is a scarce resource now. People are selling it. It's a big business to sell clean water. And therefore, one could argue this, that it is an economic good. While your seawater, which cannot be drinkable and all that, it's not an economic good, but it's a free good. Got it? So any free good, one would argue this, has no opportunity cost. You don't pay a price for it. There is no choice that is being made. You can have as much of it as you can, and therefore there is what we call no opportunity cost. But while economic goods, one would argue this, has an opportunity cost, right? Why? Because there is a price that you're paying for it. Any questions before we move on?
Yes, sir, I have opportunity cost.
Now I probably can hear you now. Yes.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sir.
So guys, when you're looking at opportunity costs, the idea goes this, that opportunity cost is the next best alternative for gone. So it's the choice that you decided not to take in the end, but it was your next best alternative. But because some other choice was giving you better returns or better sort of more benefit, you decided to go for it. So we say this, that economic goods results in what we call opportunity cost. As I said earlier, because of the fact that you are making a choice, these goods are not free, they are limited in supply. We call economic goods to be limited in supply. As you can see, guys, you can see that economic goods are limited in supply, while free goods are what we call unlimited in supply, right? And this idea of economic goods come from this notion that, because these goods are called economic goods, the reason is simply because they have an opportunity cost, which means there is a price you pay for them. So there is a price of economic goods. Make sense? While free goods, we would argue this, that free goods are unlimited supply, so there's zero price, and therefore zero opportunity cost. Make sense? Any questions, guys? So somebody's asking me this question. He's saying a lot of people say that it's the benefit behind next best alternative. Is that acceptable? Is the benefit behind? So yeah, you're looking at cost and benefit of things, right? So the benefit behind it's the benefit we're looking at when we look at benefit behind, we're always looking at the benefit, the alternative, right, Anish? So we could measure this benefit in terms of rupee form, or you can measure this benefit in terms of your next best alternative as well. So for example, I would say that, like I prefer apples over bananas, and I'm looking at these two goods. And for me, if I prefer apples over bananas, so there is a benefit that I'm foregoing. So yeah, exactly. So you're looking at things from that perspective. Make sense? Are we good? Any questions, guys?